You know, there's entire channels dedicated to complaining about Star Wars during the Disney regime. Disney Star Wars and complaining about it has become a very profitable business for many people on YouTube. And I complained quite a bit about Last Jedi a couple of years ago, but after a while I kind of stopped because you get bored of complaining about the same thing over and over again. But there's always some new story that seems to come out that leaves me scratching my head. And I want to talk about this right now. The story of Benioff and Weiss, the guys who were the TV showrunners for Game of Thrones, and how they have been dropped now or left or whatever. They're no longer doing that trilogy that we were supposed to get in 2022, 2024, and 2026. They're done. Now, again, my channel is not one that is dedicated to trashing on Star Wars. That's just not what I do, even though modern Star Wars is not really what I wish it was, right? I just don't really do that. But this has to be addressed, I feel. I have to give my thoughts on this just because I'm sure many of y'all probably agree or want to at least hear what I have to say, I would hope. So, Kathy Kennedy. This is now a track record, Kathy Kennedy. This is now a track record. And again, I want to reiterate, there are YouTube channels out there who are constantly trashing on Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not one of them. I have done a couple videos on her lack of leadership during the Star Wars regime. She has been a great producer in the past for Spielberg and Lucas, way back in the day. But when it comes to being the leader of what is now Disney Star Wars, she's not very good at it. We have Colin Trevorrow, we have Lord and Miller, and now we have Benioff and Weiss. 3 directors who were scheduled to work on a project and because of creative differences just couldn't get the job done. Now, MCU Marvel has had some things like this, but not to this level where now we have 3 different, well, not even 3 directors, it's 5 directors, but, a couple of them are in pairs, who are for some reason, they just can't get along with Kathy Kennedy. So after a while, you start to wonder, is it them or is it you? You see what I'm saying? If you're a guy who's always being complained about multiple times in the workplace, it's probably not them. It's probably you. You should look into that. So I want to discuss the Best Bit Bulletin here, what they're writing. Right, Variety revealed some insight as to what Benioff and Weiss trilogy would have been about and possibly how the departure came to be. So this is from Variety, right? And I'm just going to summarize Best Bit Bulletin because they're an independent news source. They're not part of a big magazine like Variety, and thus it's hard to really trust big magazines. But without going into every single detail here, when they talk about how there was a $250 million deal with Netflix that they had, and they were worried that might interfere with them being able to make these movies, which is a possibility. That actually is a legitimate possibility, right? But it says here that they had ambitions to take Star Wars in a new direction away from the Skywalker saga and would focus on how the Jedi came to exist. So that's what we've all kind of wanted, is the old Republic, legendary characters from the past, maybe even make Revan part of the Disney canon, stuff that people have wanted for many, many, many years. We're not going to get that, at least not under this regime. Maybe we'll get it with a different director, maybe Feige or somebody else. I mean, he's not even a director, he's a producer, but you know what I'm saying. So, it says here that this is what I really want to focus on, right? It says, multiple insiders tell Variety that when Kathleen Kennedy and her team pitches to filmmakers to join the Star Wars universe, they promise them some measure of creative control. However, new ideas are commonly shot down by Kennedy and her team as they wanted the filmmakers to stick to the company line. If disagreements become too intense, it usually results in parting ways instead of finding common ground. That's bad leadership. That is very bad leadership, because parting ways with 1 or 2 people, okay, but now we're on 3 in a very short span. Disney Star Wars, if you begin with The Force Awakens, let's not talk about any of the other movies, but 2015 is when Force Awakens came out. Obviously, they bought Lucasfilm in 2012, but Kathy Kennedy got put in charge right around then, right before then. I think George picked her. So, it's been 3 different directorial changes in 5 years. 4 years, really. It's 4 years. And to me, that's just too much. It's just, there's a problem here. And here's what I want to know. So Kathleen Kennedy and her team basically are saying you get creative control, but you don't get full creative control. And yet, what I find so weird is she gave what seemingly was full creative control to Rian Johnson because he himself said he had free reign to do whatever he wanted. Now, obviously, there had to have been some measure of guideline. For example, Rian Johnson couldn't just kill Kylo Ren and Rey, right? That was probably part of the deal. Like, you can come in and write chapter 2 of the trilogy, but you can't kill the main character, obviously, right? Things like that seem obvious. But I remember Rian himself saying he got carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wanted. So if that's the case, why is it that other directors don't get that same kind of freedom? Because Rian Johnson derailed the entire thing. Rian Johnson just knocked it off the rails. So I wonder, like, you know, when I look at Kathy Kennedy, I just wonder, like, is she really a fan of Star Wars? I don't know if she really is beyond the casual level. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much of a fan of this franchise. And I mean a fan like somebody who's invested. You don't have to read all the books or play all the video games, but somebody who's familiar with the universe and who knows what's going on. How invested is she? I'm skeptical. THR reports that D&D's exit had been brewing since August following their Netflix deal announcement, as Kathleen Kennedy did not believe the duo would juggle both their Star Wars and Netflix commitments. A source told THR that following Game of Thrones, D&D were feeling the heat and began to have second thoughts about diving into Star Wars due to the toxic fandom, and were ultimately the ones who decided to quit. So that right there kind of irritates me. The toxic fandom. So, you know, maybe if you write good movies with good characters and storylines, you wouldn't have people upset. Maybe if you made a Star Wars movie that was really, really good, like really awesome, you would not have a toxic fandom. Then again, a lot of fandoms are toxic. It's the internet. That's how it is. But as a filmmaker, as a person who's a creative, why would you care about a fandom being toxic, right? Obviously, you want to satisfy the fans. You want to give the fans what they want. But you're always going to have your bad apples. You're always going to have people who take it too far. In every fandom. Star Wars, Dragon Ball, Game of Thrones. I don't care what you're into. Video games, all kinds of different ones. But as a movie maker, you should not be worried about the fandom being toxic as much as being concerned about how to please them. And so what they're basically saying with this statement is, we don't have enough confidence to make a good movie without getting shit from the fans. That's basically what they're saying. And to me, that shit's very cowardly. And it shows that creatively, these guys are probably best not working on Star Wars. You know, they might have had these great ideas, but I don't think it would have worked out, honestly. Because, I mean, dude, what about all the other directors that are going to come in and do Star Wars? Are they worried about the toxic fandom? Was Ron Howard, when he took over for Solo, was he worried? Dude, there were people who were, like, attacking him. And what does he do? He ignores them. You know, and Rian Johnson did. Now, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Because as a content creator, I've been attacked, and it's hard to ignore sometimes. You know, sometimes you do retaliate. But all you gotta do is make a good movie. You know? Yeah, you're gonna get your bad apples, like I said, but all you have to do is make a good movie. And I have not seen Game of Thrones entirely. But from everybody who I talked to, they said that the finale of Game of Thrones was horrible. Embarrassing, in fact. So, and that's the stuff that George R.R. Martin, the original author, did not write books for yet, right? They're not basing it off a book. So it sounds to me like Benioff and Weiss only seem to work well when it's based off of something else. And that's not what they want to do here with the Star Wars. Sure, I would love it if they made a movie based on Old Republic or based on, you know, some of the EU novels, Legends, whatever. It's probably not going to happen, right? Unfortunately, it's not going to happen, but I just feel like, you know, I just feel very kind of disgusted by this. Like, oh, the toxic fandom. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's some people who are toxic, but you're a filmmaker. You know, what about the Game of Thrones fandom that trashed you for ruining their freaking story? It just seems so silly to me. So it says down here, THR reports that it's unlikely the Kevin Feige Star Wars film will replace the 2022 slot that D&D were due to fill, and that Lucasfilm are actively looking for new filmmakers to join the Star Wars family. So Kevin Feige's a producer, not a director. We have to clarify that. These guys are directors. Kevin Feige will probably help with the storytelling and the direction, but he's not a scriptwriter that we're aware of and not a director. He's just going to be there to kind of push the project along. So that should have no relation to this. It's just interesting to me that, again, now we have a third group dropping out of Star Wars. I just feel like at this point, Disney spending $4 billion on this thing. I mean, I'm sure they made their money back. I would hope. I think they did. I don't know. I keep track of their records, but it just seems like a disaster. This whole thing's a disaster. I've said it before. The sequel trilogy is a disaster. The new prequels, Rogue One had a great finale, but the rest of the movie, the characters are pretty one-dimensional. Solo was fun, but had problems. Lots and lots of problems. And doesn't really age too well, even though I do kind of like it, honestly. It's a fun movie to watch. I enjoy it. But the sequel trilogy is a freaking mess. The TV shows are a mess, except for Clone Wars coming back, and Mandalorian looks pretty good. But we'll see how that goes. This is a complete mess. They need new leadership. Kathleen Kennedy, again, I've said it before. I have nothing against the woman. She has a great history in this business, in the movie-making industry. But she's just not very good at being leader of Star Wars. Somebody else should step in. I don't know who. Filoni, maybe, if he wants. He probably doesn't even want to do it. But somebody else has to step in because this is a mess. It really is. Anyways, that's it. I will talk to you all very soon. Have a great one.